Chicago Bulls fans, trade season is heating up, and the rumors are wild. Could Patrick Williams be on the move? Is Zach LaVine's time in Chicago running out? And what about Nikola Vucevic? Will the Bulls let him walk or cash in now? With big decisions looming, the front office is at a crossroads that could change the future of the franchise. Are we about to see a blockbuster deal, or will the Bulls double down on this core? Stick around because we're breaking it all down, and you don't want to miss this. Let's get into it. What's up, Bulls Nation? Welcome back to the channel where we dive into everything Chicago Bulls, breaking down the latest news, rumors, and trade buzz surrounding our favorite team. Today, we've got some juicy updates for you, and we're talking about some big names like Patrick Williams, Zach LaVine, and Nikola Vucevic. There's been a ton of chatter swirling around these guys, and you already know that trade season always brings the drama. So let's jump into it and talk about what's going on with our Bulls, how these potential moves could shape the team, and what it all means for the future. Make sure you stick around until the end because we're going to cover some possibilities that could absolutely shake up the league. Alright, let's start with Patrick Williams, because he's been one of the most polarizing players on this roster. Bulls fans are pretty divided when it comes to him. On one hand, you've got people saying he's only 21 years old, has incredible defensive potential, and just needs more time to develop. On the other hand, there are people who think he hasn't lived up to the hype of being the 4th overall pick and argue that the Bulls need to cash in on his value while they still can. The reality is, Williams is an intriguing piece for other teams. His size, athleticism, and ability to guard multiple positions make him a player that front offices across the league would love to have. But the question is, what are the Bulls willing to give up in order to improve this roster? If they move Patrick Williams, it's going to signal a major shift in how the front office views the future. The biggest thing with Patrick Williams is consistency. He'll have nights where he shows flashes of brilliance, hitting corner threes, locking down an opposing star player, and looking like the exact kind of player every team in the league covets. But then, there are games where you barely notice him on the floor, and that's where the frustration comes in. There's no doubt the talent is there, but the Bulls are in a tricky spot. They've got this win-now core with Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic, and they can't really afford to wait around for Patrick to take that next step. So, if a trade package comes along where he's the centerpiece and the Bulls can bring in a proven player to help them right now, you've got to wonder if Art Raskarniovas and Mark Eversley will pull the trigger. Speaking of Zach LaVine, let's talk about him because his name is always buzzing in trade rumors. It feels like every time the Bulls hit a rough patch, people start speculating about whether or not Zach could be on the move. Here's the deal, Zach just signed that massive 5-year, $215 million max contract, and that's a big commitment from the Bulls front office. But at the same time, it makes him a tradable asset because teams know he's locked in for the long haul. When Zach is healthy and locked in, he's one of the most electric scorers in the league. His ability to hit shots from all 3 levels, attack the rim, and light it up in transition makes him a nightmare for opposing defenses. But with all that said, there are legitimate concerns about whether or not he's the guy who can lead this team deep into the playoffs. One of the biggest criticisms of Zach has been his decision-making in late-game situations and his defense. Let's be real, we've all seen those moments where he forces a tough shot or makes an ill-advised play when the game is on the line. And defensively, while he's improved over the years, it's still not his strong suit. If the Bulls decide to shop Zach, they could potentially get a huge haul in return. Teams that are desperate for a high-scoring wing might be willing to offer young players, draft picks, or even another star. But trading Zach would also mean the Bulls are admitting that this current core isn't working, and they'd likely be shifting towards a rebuild or retooling phase. That's a huge decision for the front office, and it's one they can't afford to get wrong. Now let's move on to Nikola Vucevic. Vuce is such an interesting piece of the puzzle because his offensive skill set is so unique for a center. He's a guy who can stretch the floor with his shooting, operate in the post, and make plays for his teammates. When he's playing at his best, he adds a whole new dimension to this team's offense. But defensively, we know it's been a struggle. He's not the type of rim protector you'd want anchoring your defense, and that's been a major issue for the Bulls, especially against elite teams with dominant big men. The other big thing with Vucevic is that he's in the final year of his contract, so the Bulls have to make a decision. Do they sign him and keep this core together, or do they try to move him before the trade deadline and get something in return before he potentially walks in free agency? The tricky part about trading Vuč is finding the right fit. The Bulls need to get value back, but it also has to be a player or package that makes sense for their roster. If they trade him without getting another center in return, they'll have a massive hole in the middle, and that could derail their season. But on the flip side, if they let him walk in free agency for nothing, that would be a massive loss considering what they gave up to get him in the first place. It's a tough spot for the front office, and it's going to be fascinating to see how they handle it. So, what does all of this mean for the Chicago Bulls as a whole? If they decide to trade one or more of these guys, it's going to signal a major change in the direction of the franchise. Are they going all in to win now, or are they taking a step back and focusing on building for the future? One thing is clear, the Bulls can't afford to stay stuck in the middle. They've got to pick a lane and commit to it. If they're going for it, they need to surround Zach, DeMar, and Vuč with players who can complement their skill sets and address the team's weaknesses. That means adding more shooting, defense, and depth. But if they're not confident in this core, they need to start looking at ways to accumulate assets, whether that's young players, draft picks, or both. Trade rumors are always exciting, but they're also a reminder of how quickly things can change in the NBA. One minute, a team is all in on their core, and the next, they're blowing it up and starting over. For the Bulls, this trade season feels like a pivotal moment. The decisions they make over the next few weeks could determine the trajectory of the franchise for years to come. Bulls Nation, we want to hear from you. What do you think the front office should do? When we talk about trade rumors and the future of the Bulls, it's important to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Chicago has a rich basketball history with 6 championships, the legendary Michael Jordan era, and a fan base that is passionate and expects greatness. But since the Derrick Rose era ended, it feels like the Bulls have been stuck in mediocrity, good enough to make some noise, but never quite good enough to be a real contender. That's why these trade rumors hit so hard. Bulls Nation wants a team that can compete for championships again, and right now, it feels like this roster is teetering on the edge of either breaking through or completely breaking apart. Should they trade Patrick Williams, Zach Lavine, or Nikola Vucevic? Or do you think they should keep this core together and try to make a run? Let us know in the comments because we love hearing your thoughts. And as always, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our Bulls content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Go Bulls!